can you just talk about what your room has looked like through 7 practices this spring so far?
Yeah. Well, I think the big thing that we're focusing on right now is consistency. New system for guys that are returning. There's a couple guys that came over with us that, have been in the system a little bit. So that transition's probably been smoother for them. But I think the big thing you look at day to day, are we taking the mistakes from one practice to the next? Are we taking them off the film? And more so, a lot of the, I wouldn't say issues, but things that we're working through right now are fundamental. And that's promising. They're picking up the scheme. They're picking up the install. It's just sometimes the fundamentals and the technique that come into executing at a high rate. Marcus,
welcome to you two. What's the working relationship like with you two guys? Having 2 guys on your line.
It's been awesome. This isn't my first rodeo doing this style of thing, and this isn't the first time it's been done in the history of college football. But it's been awesome. I've been able to take some things from Coach Meyer to put in my toolbox that I didn't have prior to, you know what I mean? So I think it's good when you got a lot of resources like that from a coaching standpoint in the O-line room. Not only between us two, but also if you guys have been around, you also see the head coach gets involved in Indy drills too, being an O-line guy, as well as Quince, who just got here. So I think it's been awesome. I think the more guys you got in the room from a coaching standpoint, I think the more reps you can get with the guy, kind of split the groups up and whatnot, and expedite their growth and development, in my opinion.
We were watching the half lines yesterday, and on every snap, you guys could both coach somebody. Turner was there doing tight end, and Ryan happened to be. So it was like every snap, there could be immediate feedback. Is that, you like that setup?
Yeah, and I think yesterday was unique. We installed Coach Silverfield's favorite play. So he was heavily involved. He was in the meetings with us too. So there was a big emphasis on the execution of that play yesterday in practice. But I think what you have is a lot of resources around the offensive line. And I think that's a huge, I guess you could say, selling point. Like, we've utilized it in recruiting to this point. You got guys with not only experience as coaches, but have had success as players as well, have been in the position of these guys and know what it looks like. And I think for them, I think they've kind of gravitated towards the amount of resources we've been able to put around them. And I think they view it, there's no weird dynamic. There's no egos in the room. I think, if anything, we're a two-headed monster that, like, we have the same goal in mind. We want to win football games, and we want to help these guys reach their goals and their dreams to play the game as long as they can.
Any specific focus with you guys, guards, centers, tackles, anything like that, or is it just all offensive line?
Well, what we do daily is try to split it up so that it's not just me with the interior guys or Coach Johnson with the tackles, et cetera. So I think it's important that we're touching the entire room, and that I think maybe on the field, I'm quicker to notice something happening on the interior. It's just a natural, like, I'm focusing in the middle. I think that's where my eyes tend to go. And Coach Johnson, I feel like, just in our interaction, I feel like he notices the stuff on the edges. But, no, it's not like Coach Johnson has the tackles. I have the interior guys. We flip back and forth. We split individual quite often, and I think for their understanding as well, they can come to both of us with questions. It's not like, hey, interior guys, you only go to Coach Myers, et cetera. So we try to divvy that up, same thing in the meeting room as well.
How did things develop with Bryant during the portal process? Is there a history there with him, or how did this process unfold?
Yeah. You want to take it?
Obviously at that time, I think the first thing that comes to everybody's mind is size when it comes to that position, And obviously Brian is a big young man, so that was the first thing that took place. Not only that, but his skill set and his ability, his length to play out on the edge was something we took notice to. And I think even with him on his side of things, he knew that there was a need at tackle here at that time, you know what I mean? And he saw an opportunity for him to get out on the field, and not only get out on the field, but to compete in this league at, in my opinion, the highest level in college football. So I think on both sides there was mutual interest amongst each other. You know what I mean? And I think that was how we got the young man here.
Any history with him from recruiting or anything like that? It just
Not
popped
me.
up?
No, it was. I guess it shocked me when we got him and his old man on campus. It was like he had followed the Razorbacks even as a youngster, and he's from Lafayette, Louisiana, and this is the team, the Hogs are who he watched growing up. It wasn't LSU. It wasn't, you know what I mean? And so I think there was a real interest from him that went deeper than the opportunity here as well for him. But, on top of all of his intangibles, he's played a lot of football too. He's got a lot of experience. And I thought that, that was important with who we brought in that position, the immediate need. And then even, I think it was easy for us to talk to him on, okay, not only coming here and furthering your development, right? Like at this point in his career, the next step as well of playing in the NFL. And, able to show him, I had a 6'8", 6'9" tackle at Memphis last season who we had for 1 year, and he's looking like a day two pick right now, and advanced himself in a really short amount of time. So I think it was more holistic where it's like, man, you could do this in the weight room and this fundamentally if we clean you up, and then in our system and how it translates to the next level. I think those were all big points for him that helped us seal the deal.
Marcus, you've got a unique perspective because you've played for Coach Silverfield. What was he like back then? And just kind of
Actually, we both did.
Oh, y'all both did. Okay, so what was he like, playing for him, and how has he maybe evolved, since then?
I would say from my experience with him, he's been the same guy. Even going back to the Viking days, he was an attention to detail guy, even just as he is today. Especially when it comes to this position, having the right step or being in the right stance, having the exact hand placement, eyes, just the details that come along with this position. So to be honest with you, I really haven't seen very much of a change in him, to be honest with you. You know what I mean? He's the same guy that I knew essentially, it's crazy how time flies, but almost 20 years ago,
Yeah, probably a lot of the same. When I first met Coach Silverfield in 2014, I was a senior playing at the University of Toledo, and same deal. It was after his time with the Vikings and the Lions, and I think that as a young player, that's intriguing. A guy that was at that level, so you're all ears. But the amount of detail that he approaches the game with, and I think you see that even translate to him as a head in the head role now, or for this amount of time, like the detail with ball security, the detail with finish, the things that sometimes he watches on film isn't as much schematic during practice as it is it looking the way that the expectation is for us to win football games,
And you mentioned a second ago the two guys that came with you from Memphis, Malachi and Josiah. Just how have they helped bring the room along? Like how much are they coaching guys up on the side, or kind of how they helped?
Yeah, well, I kind of joked with Malachi when we recruited him to come over here, and I told him, you're going to have a leg up on everybody because you know the system. You know all the drills. You know what it's supposed to look like. You know what the expectation is in the style of play that we want to, the kind of edge that we want to have. And but I said, but the next step for you in your development, you need to come in here with an edge. You need to come here with a chip on your shoulder, And I think that's how he's approached it. Is that I think every day he feels like he needs to prove himself to the SEC. You know what I mean? And he's been playing really consistent football, but I think it's been easy for them to kind of gel because Kittler's played a lot of football. It is, is a very, very smart football player. You can tell that he's played a ton and sees the game really well. But it's funny, we were talking the other day, like Kobe and Kittler had an exchange on a twist, and you could tell they've been doing it. There's a lot of reps behind it, where sometimes it might be a little more choppy between Kobe and Bryant as we continue to get comfortable next to each other. But, yeah, I think having some guys in the room that know what you expect it to look like has helped not necessarily push the message, but I think that they knew that they had to come in and prove themselves too.
And even for me, seeing some of the things that specifically Malachi, because obviously Josiah is still a young player, as a true freshman right now. But even just watching how Malachi takes command when it comes to communication. It's times he get Kit on the right page again because he's ahead in this system, But I see him communicating or over-communicating. Not only that, usually he's the first one in drills, to be the example setter in that room. You know what I mean? And even in the meeting room, usually if, a question is asked, he's one of the first ones to speak on it. You know what I mean? Again, because he's lived it and been there. But in my opinion, being around the young man a short amount of time, I think he's done really well, in my opinion.
Oh, I've got a couple of guys out of the portal that maybe not the headliners, but Weatherspoon and Robertson. What have you seen from those two kids, either one of y'all?
I think both of them are doing well. Great young men. They aim to please. They do everything you ask out of them. At first when they got here, in my opinion, you could kind of tell it was a different level that they played at and just the speed of the game. And I think they, over the last couple of weeks, I feel like they've gotten acclimated to that. But I think both young men are showing promise out there on the field. Both guys are hard workers, and obviously we need that to continue to improve from both guys. But they're doing a really good job out there.
If you go by just size and stuff, Weatherspoon normally wouldn't be on your radar, but what'd you see in him? I know he made all
The
conference.
Ohio State game.
Yeah.
I'll tell you that from immediately. Watching him specifically that game against that defense, and I saw that defense every day, and they pretty freaking good. And to be honest with you, Davion, he played a hell of a game, excuse my language, in that game, but he competed at a really high level and showed that he belonged.
I know you always want competition and no spot is secure in April, but you have had a first-team offensive line that has pretty much worked with each other through what we've seen. I mean, how important is this time period to build chemistry with maybe the five guys you have a lean or an inkling could be those five starters by the time September rolls around?
I think it's important. I think it's important for, the center's our big communicator. I think it's important for them to hear different quarterbacks as well. But I would say on average we're rolling out the same group, but we got banged up kind of at the tail end of last week, and it forced our young tackles to have to get in there and play with that first group. Like the lineup we went out there on Saturday with was completely different than anything we've done all spring. And but what we were impressed by was the communication and their ability. Like, they didn't really stand out. I thought they went in there and functioned well. Some mistakes here and there, obviously, but. And even, I know we talked about Terrence a few seconds ago. Like, Terrence has played left tackle, right guard so far this spring and hasn't missed a beat. And, as you kind of start shuffling things around, I think there's still a lot of time before we get to the first game. I think it's still important if you can move guys around to do it, to get them uncomfortable a little bit. And once we kind of get through the bulk of the install, that's when we'll start to shake things up and move guys around. Right now, I feel like it's important, just because it's so fresh for a lot of them, that as we're building the system in, that they grasp it before we start shuffling things around and making practice a catastrophe.